Has anybody ever talked to you about hiring and firing friends? Well, this is something that we got to be great at. Welcome to another episode of Living Life in Tune. This is your host, Adam Lee. This is the show where we talk about keeping things in tune in our life, staying intentional with the important things such as leadership, love, faith, purpose, manhood, all those things that we have to keep in tune. This is episode number 25. I want to say a quick thank you to all who have been listening and following along. If you're watching today on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching on social media like Facebook or Instagram, make sure to share that with your friends. It means a lot to me. This is episode number 25, and I'm going to call it, Who Are Your Friends? Who are your friends? We were meant to have great friendships. The good Lord intended us to live this life full of meaningful relationships. And I coming to the realization that life is all about building yourself a team of people, friends, coaches, counselors, all. You've heard me talk about that before, building relationships into our life that really produce great meaning and value, and it's truly the way the Lord intended it. Here's a couple scriptures out of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 27:9 goes like this: Oil and perfume make the heart glad, but the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. So saying that friendship is sweeter than oil and perfume, and then it's an additional thing that God meant for us to have and add to our life that makes it sweet. And your friends are to make your life sweeter, and you are to make life sweeter for your friends. Another scripture, Proverbs 18:24, a man of many companions comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So we have this thing happening where the Lord intends us to have great relationships and lots of friends, and for our life to have meaningful connections. But then there's a caution here that a man of many companions may come to ruin, meaning that this friendship thing is something that we ought to keep in tune, because if we do friendship the wrong way, we come to ruin. If we do friendship the right way, God intends for life to be sweet. We come to sweetness. And so we have two opposite directions. And whether or not we're mature and wise in our friendships, that determines if we go to sweetness or if we go to ruin. And life is all about, like, keeping friendship in tune is all about being a great friend and having great friends. We need to take the path to sweetness in our relationships. I read a great book called People Fuel by Dr. John Townsend a couple years ago. I will link to his book in the show notes. I'm going to be pulling a lot of good stuff out of Dr. John's book, People Fuel. And he basically goes to say that there are these basic categories of relationships in our life, and that not all relationships are created equal. And here's the gut check truth out of this book that I learned a couple years ago. I do not have unlimited resources for all of the people in my life. Let's say that so you can hear it. You do not have unlimited resources for all of the people in your life. You are a human being, and just like an energy meter or a gas meter on a gas tank in your car, the more relationships you pursue, the more your meter goes down, and you have energy and capacity for only so many people in your life. You do not have an unlimited energy meter for friendships. And so you don't have unlimited resources. And so that's one of the things we got to get up front if we're going to head into sweetness and not into ruin. A lot of people head to ruin in their relationships because they take on too many at once, and they realize they go from full to half tank to empty, and they don't realize it happens all before they even realize it. And so we have to manage something that in the book is called relational nutrition. That's right, relational nutrition. We have to come to the realization that not every person is good for you. Not every person that we bump into is good for me. Some relationships that you get into will give you nutrients, and some relationships that you get into will take nutrients from you. Some relationships add and some relationships subtract. You have to go in with the mindset and the awareness and the wisdom to realize when you're around certain people, are they adding nutrients to my life or are they subtracting nutrients from my life? If you're not aware of this, like I said, you could head to ruin because your gas tank will go from full to empty because you've surrounded yourself with people that all they do is subtract from you. And not every person adds nutrients to your life. So if you run out of nutrients, you have zero capacity left for meaningful relationships. And here's a couple telltale signs. If you're out of nutrients, these are the things that you'll be thinking and saying to yourself. You might be out of nutrients if you don't have time for any meaningful relationships in your life. You just tell yourself, who has time for friendships? There's no time in the day to make friends. You might be out of nutrients. How about this? I don't want or need any friends in my life. The Lord did intend for you to have friends. If your mindset is that you don't want them or need them, you might be on empty. You might be out of nutrients. You might have not been wise in who you surrounded yourself with. How about this one? People are too much work. If you're thinking to yourself, I don't have a lot of friends because people are just too much work, well, that might mean you're on empty. And again, you didn't think twice about who you put in your circle, in your friends. How about this? I've just got to get away from people. Well, I can relate to that. And if you're thinking that, I do understand that sometimes we do need to get away. I think Jesus himself needed to get away from people from time to time. But if you're chronically trying to get away from people and you can't be around people, you're probably on empty. You probably don't have any people adding nutrients to your life. Therefore, you don't want to be around anybody. You might be out of nutrients if you enjoy being alone, telling yourself, I don't need anyone else. Okay, those are telltale signs that you might be out of nutrients. But remember, God wants you to flourish in relationships. He wants you to enter into sweetness, the sweetness that only good friends can bring to your life. So in this episode, we're going to run down through People Fuel, some of the things that I learned from that book. These are the different categories. I love categories. It's just the way my mind works. When I can put things in categories, they really start to make sense for me. So I hope this makes sense for you. These are the couple different categories here, 7 categories of people that you can add to your life. Okay? Beware. They vary in nutrients. The list starts from the people who add the most nutrients to your life all the way down to the people who intentionally take nutrients from your life. Okay? So this is in varying degree from great friends to down near the worst of enemies. Okay. Number 1, coaches. This is in Dr. John Townsend's book. This is the very first one. These people, coaches, this category, listen to this. These individuals with whom we engage to mentor, to develop us, to guide and direct us. A coach can be paid or pro bono. Coaches have 3 qualities. Check this out. They are subject matter experts in an area of your interest. For example, like leadership or parenting or your emotional health or spiritual growth or your physical development, just anything that you can think of that you want to obtain, they are already there. They are subject matter experts and they are coaches. They know how to coach. This is the requirement of a coach. They actually know what they're doing. There's a science to coaching, and they know the theory of getting you from point A to point B. And then another qualification of a coach is they have no personal need for you. They're not reaching out to you for nutrients. They don't need you in their life. You are acquiring them in your life, and that's fine. And then they make it all about you. And so this is the highest level of nutrients that you can receive in terms of being filled from empty to full is a life coach. They're very popular these days, and I know you can click and get one for $9.99 a month online. But listen, that's really not, that can be how it works, but that's really not how it works. A coach is like a person that knows you, that's invested in you, that loves you. that is willing to spend time with you because they genuinely want to see you win. And the best coaches are personal relationships that are willing to pour into you like that know you, that know your family. And that's not always something you can get online. So keep that in mind. Coaches is the very first one, very first category. They will give you tons of nutrients. The second category is comrades. I love this because they all start with C. Comrades. These are your closest people. I would venture to say these are your best of friends. These are like 3 to 7 people. We don't get very many of these. And sometimes they change throughout life a little bit. But these are the individuals who know everything about you. They accept you fully. They tell you the truth when you need to hear it. And they are fully involved in their own growth. They're not dependent on you for their growth, but they love you, they know you, they're invested in you, and they can be vulnerable with you, and you guys can do life together. These are comrades. These are, under coach, are the most life-giving friendships that you can have. If you do not have comrades in your life, people you can legitimately say, these are some of my best friends, then there's no wonder why you don't want to be around people and that you don't want to have any friendships in your life. It's because you're out of nutrients. You don't have anybody adding to you. And so comrades is the second one. Get yourself a life team. Pull in some really close friends and enjoy those nutrients that you will give to one another. You will head towards sweetness in friendships and not ruin. And the next one is casuals. Casuals. Okay, so these are life's acquaintances. Sometimes this gets a bad rap, like there's something wrong with having acquaintances. This is just a category of nutrients in your life. If you could have the wisdom to process all of these things as the maturity to just fill your heart with nutrients so that you can be the best you can have the most to give to others, there's nothing wrong with casuals, with having great acquaintances. These are the friends and neighbors that we bump into who have these are great positive people in our life. Maybe our kids have the same soccer team or the same baseball team. We bump into them at events or church, and they help us experience life in the moment, and they add value to us by just being around us. It's an acquaintance. It's a casual thing. There's not a lot of expectations. They're not expecting from us. We're not expecting from them, but it gives us the benefit of having nutrients added to our life, and it's important. And guess what? The casuals are are like the farm league for people who might become your comrades. You might be in a setting where there's 15, 20 casuals, and all of a sudden you go, hey, that guy thinks a lot like me. That person talks like me, man. We have the same interests. We have a lot in common. I think that they could probably be a comrade in my life. And just like that, they're the farm league in your life for great friends. And so there's casuals. Then we have colleagues, okay? A level under that. Remember, we're still heading in the direction of sweetness. These are all people who add nutrients to our life. Coaches, comrades, casuals. Now we have colleagues. And all of these areas, these categories, if you have people in your life that fit these categories, you're going to be on full all the time. Your life is going to be sweet. You're going to have great, meaningful friendships. And so colleagues are the people that we spend a lot of time with because we work with them. This is a no-brainer. We spend sometimes 40, 50 hours a week with our colleagues. And, some people make the mistake, though, that the people that they work with are like their only source of friendships in their life. They don't have friends outside of work. And you have to realize that you're limiting your own personal nutrients when you have this mentality that God intended for you to go home from work and have great friendships outside of work. All of the relationships that I've mentioned up to this point are outside of work, and those are very important, those coaches, comrades, and casuals. Now we're at work, though, and we're talking about this. I just wanted to throw that in there. We spend a great deal of time with them. sometimes work is where we cross the line. This category of relationship is what crosses the line, going from people that add from us to people who subtract from us. Okay, so we've got to be careful at work, because we don't always get to choose who we hang out with at work. And sometimes we bump into people at work who are down in these lower categories and who don't add to us. Their only concern is to take. And we don't get to pick who we work with. In circumstances where you do get to pick who you work with, here's a couple people you can look for at work that will add to you. Now listen, this is important. If and when you can pick who you spend time with at work, this is who you need to pick. People who are truly competent, who enjoy their job, who show up on time, who put the work in. They're truly competent people. They will add value to you. People who are relationally oriented, people who know what it means to have friends outside of work, who are healthy and mature in managing their own personal relationships. They will add value to you. If you can be around them at work, you've got to. It's so important. And then number 3, they work well on teams. They're team players. They're humble. They're smart. They realize the importance of teamwork and doing life with others. And they can add so much energy and value and nutrients to your working life. The opposite of that is also true. People who are incompetent will suck the nutrients out of your life. People who are relationally retarded, relationally just ignorant, will suck the nutrients out of your life. People who do not work and play well with others, who cannot be on a team and have to be ball hogs and, quite frankly, crybabies. They will take the nutrients out of your working life so fast. And you got to be real careful about how much time you're spending with those type of working relationships. Okay, going on down the list. This is where we went from people adding value to us, the first couple. Now these are those that take from us. And I want to say before I go into this that not all relationships that subtract value from us, that take nutrients from us, not all of those are bad. As a matter of fact, it's actually a godly, Jesus practiced this, healing people, making people whole, adding value to people who couldn't add value to him, giving nutrients, giving of his own nutrients to people who couldn't give back. This is a Christ-like thing. The danger is that if we're not mature, we won't have the great relationships in place to be able to manage some of these ones that take from us. And so this is the difference between sweetness and ruin in this episode, is that if we don't have a good base of nutrients already built, we'll head into these other relationships where people take from us, and we'll just let them take everything we have, and then we burn out, we head to ruin, and exactly what you were thinking we were talking about at the beginning, where I don't have time for people are too much work, I can't have any meaningful relationships in my life, people are just no good. That's where you'll end up. And that's not good. So you got to build that base first before you go into these. But having these relationships, these relationships that we give of our nutrients, they're actually biblical and they're actually Christ-like. So I wanted to say that before I dove in. Here is the next category: care relationships. These individuals are without something that they need, and we have the capacity to supply that need. They're care relationships. We get into them because we want to take care of them. They don't have what they need, and we have the ability to supply that need. And so we can take on care relationships. I've got a couple of people in my life that I've entered into a relationship with them, and I know that I add more nutrients to them than they add to me, and that's okay. I'm mature enough, I'm relationally intelligent enough, I can give of my nutrients to them, no problem. And I got to be careful about how much time I spend with them, but when I'm around them, I do realize what's happening, that I'm supplying something that they need, and it's actually Christ-like. It's actually great. It actually gives me something that the Dr. Townsend points out in his book, that care relationships, the act of generosity, it actually it's actually part of giving back and what living healthy is all about. It releases oxytocin in us, which is a hormone that lifts our own spirit. So being generous and caring for people, meeting the needs of people in our life actually produces hormones in our body that give us energy, that give us life. And I'm telling you, man, if we're healthy in our relationships, taking on some care relationships can really add value to your life. But you just have to be aware. Remember what we said at the beginning. You do not have an unlimited capacity to help everybody. You cannot care for everybody, and you will run out of nutrients if you are not careful. The next category, and this is where we start to get into some of the lousiest relationships in your life. Chronics. These are sometimes referred to as the bless their heart individuals. Chronics are not bad people. They are often very good people. However, they do have long-term patterns of having lots of problems that rarely ever go away. They do have long-term patterns like job problems, financial problems, emotional problems, family problems, relationship struggles. They're not really; those aren't really problems in themselves. We all have those, but the problem with chronics is that their problems are perpetual. They do not go away. They stay in those problems, and the chronic people have what Dr. Townsend calls a flat learning curve. A flat learning curve. They do not learn much from their experiences, nor do they apply any advice that you give them. and time after time, they repeat the same mistakes. These relationships take nutrients from you. They do not add. Be careful how many chronics you have in your life, okay? Listen, I know some of us have to have chronics in our life. By choice, we're related to them. I'm not saying I'm related to any, but I do get it that we sometimes have to be around people like that at least a couple times a year. But I usually keep like maybe one relationship alive in my life that's a chronic relationship, because sometimes a chronic can transition into a care relationship where they finally come around. But listen, I cannot do more than one. These are people, like I said, they just perpetually in problems. They need money. They need help. Their relationships are always a mess. We cannot surround ourselves with people like this. They will take all of our nutrients. They have no capacity to add to us. And before we know it, we turn into ruin. And we're not living the life. We're not living in the friendships that God intended for us to have. So watch out for chronics. They are the bless their heart people. And then the very last category, the contaminants. Okay? Up until now, all of these relationships, good or bad, had great intentions. Even those chronics have awesome intentions. They are usually great people, and they don't want to harm you. They don't want to hurt you. We're transitioning into the bottom of the barrel here, the contaminants. These are on another level of imperfect people. They have bad motives. They're actually motivated to take from you and to bring you harm. They tend to be envious people. They desire to damage and to divide, and they can attack. They can attack your family. They can attack your business. They can attack your marriage. They can attack your soul. And listen, you will have clear evidence of a contaminant in your life if you're getting attacked, or if you're experiencing their bad behavior in your life. If you give them a fair warning, like, listen, that's not going to work for me. We can't be friends if you keep doing that. If you give them a clear warning and they don't keep your advice, they don't change their ways, this person is absolutely out of the question. They will take from you and take from you and take from you, and nobody will empty your fuel tank faster than a contaminant. That's what they do. And so you got to beware of that. If you are not emotionally mature enough to realize you're around a contaminating individual, then you're gonna be blindsided, and you're gonna head to ruins that you didn't even know were possible. So remember, the Lord intended us to be great with relationships, to have meaningful friendships. I want you guys to check out this book, People Fuel, by Dr. John Townsend. It's an amazing read. It gave me so much clarity around the type of friends that I want to have in my life. I want to have coaches, comrades, casuals, colleagues. I want to take care of people. I want my life to be full and meaningful. And I know this takes intentionality, this takes wisdom. And guess what? Sometimes this means in your life, you have to hire friends and you have to fire friends. Has anybody ever talked to you about hiring and firing friends? Well, this is something that we got to be great at. If we realize that the majority of our relationships are sucking the nutrients out of us, we have to fire some friends and we've got to hire some new ones. And remember, we ought to be full, living life on full, in tune with our friendships. And the people that we surround ourselves with will either lead us to sweetness, lead us to fullness, or lead us to empty and ruins. So I want you to have great relationships. Pick up that book and remember this: your life matters, so keep it in tune.